When it comes to website accessibility and reducing your risk of being sued, what I want you to do is think of this as something that happens over time rather than something that you can force immediately to happen. And when I say happens over time, this doesn't have to be a long span of time. This might just take a few weeks, maybe several weeks, or maybe even multiple months, but it doesn't have to take that long, but it is going to take some time, mostly because of the sheer amount of work that is involved. So it's very important to know this because I think sometimes website owners think that they can buy something that immediately takes care of accessibility and the risk of a lawsuit. And it's not something that you can purchase as like a, something you're buying off of Amazon. You have this product and problem solved. It just takes time. And so that's why I have this graphic on the screen titled Risk Reduction Mindset, because we want you to be thinking in terms of chipping away at this and reducing your percentage over time. So, not going from 100 to zero, but rather incrementally reducing risk um, as the days and the weeks pass by. So that's the right mindset here. Now, there are two potential paths, and one is to hire a service, have them audit your website, and then work on remediation. And so, in that case, the work is you're really paying for the work to be done, and it is helpful. And this is optimal because this could potentially get it to where you have zero technical accessibility issues, and that is the more optimal path. However, there is a trade off, and the trade off is if you are working on this on your own. And so let's just say you have a smaller budget, you're not going to pay however much your audit would cost. Let's say your audit would be $1,700. You're not going to pay this, you're going to take the DIY approach. Well, obviously, that's suboptimal because you're not going to have the accessibility expertise. You're not going to be able to, you're likely not going to find all of the accessibility issues. Uh, but the benefit here is that you can be aggressive and get started right away. And so you could start reducing your risk today by working strategically on accessibility. And that's what I have next on this graphic is to be strategic. So what can happen is website owners can get started and they can get derailed by certain accessibility sellers that are selling them something that really doesn't help them at all. But it's being sold because it benefits the accessibility seller. And so that happens a lot is that website owners are misled by being, um, they're learning about accessibility from the seller and it causes problems. And so they don't know exactly what to do to actually reduce risk. So being strategic, part of being strategic is just being informed on exactly what to do. And if right now you don't know exactly what to do, then uh, I highly recommend my materials that I put out. One of them being the War Room, which I'll talk about more in a moment. But what I want to do now is I'm going to show you a graphic, and this is a line graph where we have two lines that represent two different website owners. And all of this is just hypothetical, but it does illustrate a point. And my point is that you can steadily reduce your risk of a lawsuit over time. Now, generally, the way you do this is reduce your accessibility issues, right? So generally, the less accessibility issues, the less likely you are to be sued. But you want to you want to approach this strategically and infuse intelligence so that you're not just working on any accessibility issues and you're not just thinking about working through the issues in one way, and you have all of these different aspects that you're considering that you just wouldn't have unless you have experience in this. But going back to the graphic, we have the starting point, which is right now. And let's say you haven't worked on accessibility at all, and your risk of being sued is at 100%. That's not to say you will be sued, but just to say that all things equal, like right now, you are at maximum level of being sued because you haven't worked on accessibility at all. So the starting point is here. And then we have two different website owners. one website owner, the first line with the sharpest decrease is in red, and they immediately get to work. And so by days 1 and 2, they're already down to, let's say, 84% risk. By week 1, they're down to 75, and then week 2, they're at 60%. So they are really bringing down their percentage risk over time. And when I assign these percentages, these are very arbitrary, but they're illustrative of my point, which is that you can significantly reduce your risk. And you do this through strategically taking action and reducing accessibility issues. So, continuing on down, they work really diligently. By week 3, they're at 41%. Week 4, they're in the 20s. And by week 5, they're at 18% risk of being sued. So that is what you want to do. If you can take action, you can be aggressive and strategically approach this, knowing exactly how to reduce your risk. You can do this, and you can gain confidence along the way. You're increasing accessibility, and you're also decreasing your legal risk. Now, the second website owner doesn't have as sharp of a decline, but you still see progress being made. So we started at 100 by day 1 or 2. By days 1 and 2, we're at 96%. Week 1, we're at 94%, but then we move all the, or no, week week 1, we're at about 90%, and then week 2, 80%. And then just continues on down to week 5, where we're below 60%. So we're at like 57%. So the point here being steady progress is still being made, even though it's not as rapid as the first website owner. This is still what we want to see because obviously everyone's in a different position, maybe different budget, different time available, um, different ability to hire someone or have some, maybe someone has to source out work to a freelance developer, maybe someone already works with a freelance developer. The point is that we want to steadily reduce our risk over time, and that is what is happening in this graph. Even though one website owner is not as quick as the other, still this is the positive progress that we want to see. And if this pattern continues, eventually we're going to get near that floor of 0. So I've got this graphic labeled as decrease ADA website lawsuit risk, and then I have a general arrow pointing down just to indicate that's where we want this to go. We want to continually take this down as much as possible. And that's how website owners need to look at this, not as something that can happen all at once. Even if you source out work to accessible.org, even if you source out an audit, even if you source out remediation, it's still going to take time, even with expertise on your side. So, yeah, I think it's a worthwhile investment, obviously. But the trade off here is that if you are taking this on as a website owner, as a DIY project, as long as you have the information necessary, as long as you have the strategy, you can still make progress, significant progress on your own. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be optimal. The optimal situation is you're going to be working with an accessibility expert. But just because it's not perfect doesn't mean it's not effective. And so, one benefit to taking the DIY approach is that you can get started right away. So, you're not even waiting on an audit. You're just going. If you get an audit, though, I wouldn't start working on your own because then you're going to tamper with the audit results. So, if you get an audit, just wait on the audit. There are other things you can do to support your efforts and slightly bring your risk down, but there are things that you should be doing along the way. But this is what I would do. There's two paths. One is more optimal. One is more we're seeking perfection in this case being WCAG conformance. But the other is let's be as aggressive as possible and start doing what we can right now to reduce our risk. So tabbing back to the preview graphic, chip away, and then I have here, you need to know what to do. So obviously this channel is going to help you. If you watch through some of my videos, you will hear me talk about WCAG 2.1 AA conformance. You'll hear me talking about working on specific accessibility issues. We know that alt text and alt text related issues are the number one most commonly claimed issue in complaints filed in court. So we want to start working in this direction, and you can gain a lot of insight just by reading accessible.org, searching through the blog, searching through the site. But what I recommend is my War Room strategy session. This strategy session is 2.5 hours of my very best advice, the advice that I will consult with clients on, and I will tell them one on one. This session has that information and really more because it's not limited to an hour. I made it 2.5 hours and I just covered everything step by step, and it's almost all strategy. A lot, some of it's information, but a lot of it is like, here's how to approach this strategically. And it's not the technical side, but it is the strategy side. And so you get a lot of context. And once you go through the war room and you go through the entire uh, strategy, the entire strategy session, once you go through this, then you can have confidence knowing that, okay, now I know everything in play. Now I get it. Now I see exactly what I need to do. And now I have a path forward. So that's what I have here on the graphic is to go premium. The war room is available at 88compliance.net. I've also got a link in the description. And if you need help with services, I'll also link to accessible.org, my company, in the description. But if you hire a service, just know, like, it takes time, right? Like an audit I have here as an estimated 1 to 2 weeks. And then remediation is 5 to 8 weeks. And then that can cost about $10,000. Obviously, that's a gross generalization. It's going to depend on your website. But for a simple Shopify website, that might be the type of time frame and cost you're looking at. But that's not to say that you can't make significant headway on your own. And even after you do, so even after you take this approach and start chipping away and reducing your risk, you can always go for accessibility services later. So you can always go for the audit after you've reduced after you've taken care of a lot of the accessibility issues. Hopefully the audit's going to help you understand what you're still missing, what you weren't able to fix. But just getting started, just being aggressive and chipping away is going to really help. So, but you want to make sure that when you're taking action, your action is actually leading to results. So, what you don't want to do is find yourself in a situation where you're taking a lot of action and you're investing a lot of time and you're studying, but you're everything you're doing is going off, and so you're headed in the wrong direction. It's like, let's say you are driving to a location. Let's say it's another state. You're moving to another state, and you want to get there really fast. And the trip is 15 hours, and you get started, and you are uh, going optimal speed. You've got everything set up, but you don't realize that you've put in the wrong location to the GPS, so you're actually off course. So you don't want to go really fast in exactly the wrong direction. What you want to do is you want to make sure that you're on the right path the first time. And that leads to the last point I'll make is that you want to be done with this the first time. So you don't want to have to make the same effort twice. And I've also seen this happen because sometimes clients, again, they'll get misled by another accessibility seller, and what will happen is they'll need to start all over again from the beginning. And so it's like, really, all that time and money that went into the first project is wasted, because it does happen. You can get derailed by bad information, and there is so much bad information that exists in the accessibility space. So if you want to even get started, I'll link to um, I'll link to the accessible.org guide on ADA website compliance. That will give you a really good framework. But to get the strategy, to get a good feel of exactly what to do, and really just the knowing exactly what to do as fast as possible, taking the straightest path to your destination, I highly recommend that you get the War Room strategy session, because I give everything is right there for you. And it's just like I take you behind closed doors into what would be a consulting session, and I just lay out all of the information. And a lot of times people don't even, some of the stuff I talk about doesn't even come up because we'll run out of time on a session, or the client won't ask me certain things, and they're more concerned with something else. So this strategy session gives you exactly what I would be concerned about, like what I would be thinking. Now, obviously, the information is generalized, but it's extremely helpful. So I recommend you sign up for the War Room. I will include a link in the description. And the key takeaway from this video is, no matter what, just be aggressive, and but know what you're doing when you're being aggressive. And then part of that, or a lot of that, is being strategic.